I mentioned at the beginning of assembly that Stephen Bess, who incidentally is watching this in California right now, had initiated this idea because he felt profoundly changed and influenced by the writing program at MBA and by some of his teachers, particularly Dr. Pascal, my predecessor, who was his English teacher. And he wanted to essentially say to the student body and to the faculty that the writing process made a difference in his own life and in his professional career. Stephen probably would have been here today for this event, but he got sick this year, and he's actually struggling with a type of cancer, and he's undergoing a bone marrow transplant on April 23rd. He wrote me last night about this morning and about that process and how a lot of the lessons he learned here would give him, he thought, the endurance and fortitude to do well under pretty tough circumstances, because not only does he have to have that transplant on the 23rd, he will have to be in the ICU unit for about a month to make sure that things are okay. So clearly I'm saying to him that on behalf of the school community, we wish him the best, and certainly say good morning very early to you out there, Stephen, and hope you enjoy this contest. Our college admissions office asks the seniors to submit their essays for the competition, and then they narrow the number of entries to the 3 finalists that we'll hear today, and then the panel in front of me will judge which one is the best, and we'll recognize the winner at the end of assembly. So it's their own order. It'll be first Tate Ramsden, and then Chris Habermann, and then Hamilton Milwee. Let's recognize all 3 as Tate comes up.
Someone I have never met has changed my life. As a young boy, I spent many afternoons during the summer on the 5th floor of 1 Belmead Place, my dad's office building, waiting for him to give me a ride. Although these afternoons often passed without much excitement, each day was punctuated by faint singing on the street below. Looking out the window, I could make out a man in the distance waiting at the nearest bus stop. Not only would Mr. Happy sing unintelligible nonsense at the top of his lungs, he would also climb onto the bus stop bench to amplify his voice. After the first couple of days, I quizzically asked my dad what and why the strange man was shouting at every passing car. My dad simply shrugged and told me that Mr. Happy sang because he was happy to be alive. Even after this simple explanation, Mr. Happy continued to perplex me. Upon my next visit to the office, which of course meant witnessing another dose of singing from the top of the bench, I launched into another round of questioning, as would any other inquisitive 8-year-old. From this investigation, I discovered that Mr. Happy worked a minimum wage job at the local Target. Apparently, he managed to hold all of his singing in at work, instead saving it to preach his message of pure joy at the bus stop. That night, when I returned home from swim practice, I immediately asked my mom if she knew of the man at the bus stop. Almost instantaneously, she lit up and said, "Mr. Happy? Of course I do. Everyone knows Mr. Happy." This introduction to Mr. Happy soon changed my perspective on goals and expectations. I live in a private school world, one full of pressures to succeed as a gentleman scholar athlete. While all these pillars remain extremely important to me, I've discovered that approaching life with an honest joy can completely redefine success. My self-expectations remain as high as ever, but I force myself to stop and enjoy all that high school has to offer, from Friday night football games to truly enjoying learning new material in class. Almost anyone else would find Mr. Happy's life boring and unsuccessful. This man, however, has learned to find joy in simply being alive. Rudyard Kipling noted that the quest for wealth often produces emptiness. Someday you will meet a man who cares for none of these things. Then you will know how poor you are. Even though I've never met Mr. Happy, a local Target worker has managed to change my life. Every time I see him inside the store, he reminds me once again what it means to lead a truly happy existence. Despite owning no car and holding a minimum wage job, he has managed to influence one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Nashville, reminding every passing car at 5:30 that happiness can come to anyone who looks in the right places.
The sun was shining brightly overhead, as I was playing with my friend outside the Montessori Center preschool. We were two heroes, fighting hordes of evildoers and villains with invisible swords and guns. Halfway through our conquest, I asked him, "Who are we fighting?" He responded, "The Germans, of course. They're awful. My great-great-grandfather killed dozens of them in the World War II. After the battle, I went around the playground asking other kids what they thought about the Germans. All of them said they didn't like them, and that the Nazis, which they told me was what bad Germans were called. I was horrified at this thought, that my dad, who came from Germany, could be some sort of fiend, and watching Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark that night did not help this image. I became even more terrified when I found out that he was an alien. Little did I know that his green card simply meant that he was from a different country, not a different planet. It was much easier to come to terms with my mom's heritage than with my father's. When I tell people that I'm part Indian, they say, "Oh, Gandhi." When I tell them that I'm part German, they say, "Oh, Hitler." Apparently my skin color is deceiving, causing other people to think that I'm Mexican, Greek, Middle Eastern, or some other dark complexioned nationality. I tell them that I'm half German, half Indian, and 100% American. This German side of me, however, can make me feel less than 100% American at times. I remember my teacher in 3rd grade asking the class if any of our forefathers had fought in the world wars. My shy, mumbled 8-year-old response was, "Yeah, but not on the side you're thinking of." It took me a while to come to terms with my heritage. It happened in my grandmother's house in Germany when I was 10. I was exploring every nook and cranny since I came here at best only once a year. In the study upstairs, I had a foreboding feeling as I set my eyes upon a drawer in the bookcase. Something dark was in the bottom of that drawer, something that I had found years before but chose to forget. The drum of my chest started to beat faster and faster, reaching a fevered pitch as I touched something cold and metallic underneath all the papers. I knew that this was it. As I pulled it out, I remembered finding the item when I was much younger, about 6 or so, and immediately running down the stairs as fast as my little legs could take me to hide underneath my covers. I gazed upon it after I pulled it out. It was less sinister than I had remembered. The metal was beginning to rust, and the cream-colored, plastic-feeling ivory grip was chipped. But where the hilt and the blade met was still that dastardly symbol, a German eagle standing atop of a swastika. This time, I wasn't overcome by a wave of fear. Okay, I may have been a little scared, but rather accepted my roots. By now I knew that not all Nazis were bad, but usually good German people who just wanted to survive an extremely oppressive regime. Thankfully, my family falls into that latter description. They even hit a Jewish woman during the height of the war. This time, instead of running away scared, I studied the sword for a few minutes, sort of fought my shadow as any self-respecting 10-year-old boy would do, and then gently placed it back so that I could continue with my exploration of the house. This event taught me one crucial lesson. Without knowledge, I felt powerless. When I was young, I thought that all Germans in the Nazi era were dark, destructive, and demonic. With this inchoate image of my past, I had felt scared and powerless. Once I had learned more, however, I was able to face my fears and overcome them. The motto of my high school, Fortitudo per Scientiam, resounds with me as I think back to the moment that started my desire to learn as much as possible. Through knowledge comes strength. Thank you.
It's 5:30 in the morning. The sun is peeking over the Boston skyline. The elderly speed walkers and warm-ups are filing out their front doors. The smell of McGriddles is wafting through the air, and 2 teenagers are lying face down in the middle of Commonwealth Avenue. This scene may seem ripped from a surrealist sketchpad, but to me, it's simply the morning after a far more enlightening night. My name is Hamilton Milwee, and I'm lying on the pavement next to a Moroccan girl named Salma, a friend I met the night before who changed my life forever. The night before, my fellow students and I at Boston University's High School Honors Program were corralled into the dining hall. In fact, a record-breaking heat wave had struck the city and forced all of us into the only room with air conditioning. In fact, with no homework, I was passing the time playing Texas Hold'em with 2 natives of Dallas and Salma. At 11 p.m., while all the other students were nodding off, Salma and I were just beginning our discussions. We both enjoyed foreign policy, we both loved K-pop, and most importantly, we both shared a very strong faith in God. But to her, he was Allah. Never before had I discussed at length with someone faithfully who is not a Christian. Her trust and dedication amazed me. She said something I had thought strange coming from a non-Christian at the time. If you believe in a loving God, a power far greater than yourself, why don't you try to incorporate that greatness into your life every single day as much as possible? I was feeling a crisis of conscience. Coming from the Bible Belt, I'd grown up in church. In fact, I was told from the moment I left the womb that Jesus was the only way, and that everyone who doesn't believe he is the Son of God cannot have eternal life. And though I had questioned that statement's authenticity multiple times before, never before had I been this conflicted. Here was a girl who was as devoted to her faith as I was to mine, if not more. And in my ignorance, I'd even viewed Muslims as people who may pray multiple times a day, but don't really believe. People who use their faith to push a political agenda. I'd not actually stopped to think that one might think the exact same thing of a Christian. Looking at Salma and her faith, I realized that no living human would ever be positive that his or her faith is right. And it would be a little bit too late to change anything when he or she did. Until that day, all that we can hope is to follow the faith that we choose wholeheartedly while remaining open to new ideas. I found that closed-mindedness is the bane of progress and of truth. She and I continue to exchange ideas and compare lives into the wee hours of the morning. In honor of our all-nighter, and in order to take part in a growing fad, she mentioned that we should plank a few objects around Boston, and one of those included Commonwealth Avenue. The lack of cars may have helped, but laying prone on one of the busiest streets in Boston while another person takes a picture is a great way to christen a new friendship and a newly found cultural understanding. Sadly, due to sheer distance, I'm only maintaining one of those two today. Since I got back to Nashville, though, I've sought out new people of different faiths, ethnic backgrounds, and heritages, simply to create a dialogue and to get to know each other. I try at least once a day to be a Salma to someone else.
Well, I'd like to thank the three participants this morning in the essay contest. College admissions is a topic, I think, of great interest with a lot of people nationally and internationally. As Mr. Gaines and I were talking before the program today, college admissions has changed dramatically in the last 10 to 15 years. It's gotten much more competitive, and so the college essays become a distinguishing factor among applications that have, or students whose applications have very similar numbers and very similar achievements in different kinds of ways. So you saw this morning, I think, 3 different examples of really great essays. So thank you 3 for sharing. The good news for us at MBA is that a lot of seniors could have submitted their essays because they've worked really hard, the senior class has worked really hard on crafting and developing essays that reflect who they are, reflect their individual talents, reflect what they hope to achieve later on in life, reflect their passions, and really give college admissions officers a good sense of what they might do when they get to their campus. And that's really one of the most important things about the college essay, is that students help themselves distinguish themselves in an incredibly selective admissions pool. I'm going to tell you guys the categories that the judges judged on. The different categories are clearly organized essay. Topic is appropriate for a college essay. It helps the audience to learn something about the student. The essay captures your attention. And the essay will help the student to stand out in an applicant pool. I think all 3 of these definitely did that, and based on their college admissions decisions, that absolutely helped them in the process. But today they had to choose a winner among these 3, and today's winner is Chris Habermann.